Hello everyone, welcome to IIT Roorkee. I understand that we are in some uncertain times, but well, we will do the best we can. So, we are going to have a different mode of learning with respect to CEN 105, which is Introduction to Environmental Studies. Let us look at what we have here. So, we traditionally have 3 lectures per week for this 3 credit course, yes, and traditionally it was supposed to be 25% midterm, final or ETE 50% and tutorials or CWS for 25%, right. And typically you would come across this particular criteria of 75% minimum attendance, but because of the mode of running of this course we are not going to have this, and even the breakdown of these 3 aspects or these 3 variables which will help in grading will be arrived at after we consult with you, right. I am going to take a poll and then we are going to be done with it. So, another aspect, as I just mentioned, is that we are going to look at running this course in a relatively different way, in the sense that we now have, I believe, 1200 students due to various aspects coming in every year, and this course is supposed to be what do we say, taken by all the students, all the 1200 students. So, with 8 faculty or 9 faculty and such faculty student strength ratios and also medium of communication and so on and so forth, variation in the content from one faculty to the other, differences in grading, again lot of issues or a few issues. So, to sort them out and to be able to deliver the content in a better manner, while allowing more importantly for worthwhile discussion during the class time, we hit upon this idea of pre-recording the content, sharing that with you, having the discussion about the content and also the research and or newspaper articles which we are going to share with you in the class, right. And in this course, if what do we say, there are no more disruptions, we are going to have 3 field visits to a sewage treatment plant, a hazardous waste treatment storage and disposal facility and a e-waste recycling center, right. So, they are nearby Roorkee. So, we will try to plan for these visits once you are here, right. So, I think more or less I covered the general aspects, and next aspect is we have around 6 MS Teams groups, yes. The first point of contact is not your faculty, it is going to be your CR, your class representative, and then you are going to have a teaching assistant assigned for your particular group, then contact the TA. If the TA can't, what do we say, get the job done, or you need to escalate the matter further, you can then talk to your instructor here. So, typically we have 6 or so people taking this particular course in this particular manner. So, first talk to the instructor, and even then if it is not what do we say, resolved or the issue is not resolved, talk to me. The reason I mention this specifically even in the video is that I received a phone call, let us say from a particular parent of a particular student. He called me around, what is it now, 15 plus 7, 32 plus 5, 37 times in a single day. Reason, he wanted to know how to join MS Teams, right. And then I have around 100 or so emails already in my inbox. So, one person can't deal with such petty issues. Most such petty issues can be resolved at the level of the CR or the TA, right. So, that is something for you to keep in mind. First contact your CR, TA and then the instructors. Please do not overwhelm us with emails or such unless it is necessary. That is one aspect to keep in mind, right. Anything else before we jump in? Well, I guess not. So, about this course, here we are going to look at how can engineers make economically, typically this is what everything is about, all the jobs are about, economically informed decisions. But now with effects, environmental effects and the situation we are in, now everything is about sustainability or how to take environmentally informed decisions. So, quite a few people at this stage would be asking a question, okay, I am from a branch, let us say humanities, CS, right, or physics, why does this matter to me? So, we have just a couple of or 2 examples here, let us say, which we are going to look at. Hopefully, that will help you understand why we need to be aware of what is going on around us and what are the major aspects that we can maybe work upon, small but steady progress, we can resolve quite a few of these issues. So, we will look at what are those issues and what is it that we can do, right. So, again as mentioned earlier, this is going to be an introductory class where we are going to look at two aspects. Both these aspects we are going to look at adverse environmental impacts of human actions, and then we are going to look at or start moving on to some of the meatier topics, let us say climate change and so on and so forth, right. So, two topics of interest for now. Again, why is it that we are going to look at? Because I would like to answer why do we, rather I care. Let us say I am a selfish person. So, if somebody is going downhill, let us say I am not going to be bothered, let us say, right. That is how it is right now in society. So, but why do you need to care about what it is that we are going to discuss, right. So, let us see what it is that I have. So, here you have a lead recycling facility, right. And this was part of the reason why I delayed the start of the class. I was on an official inspection trip to this industrial area. People were complaining about harmful what do we say effects on their health, cancer and so on and so forth. I will not go into those details at this stage. So, you have lead recycling centers where where is lead coming from? Earlier from the mines, let us say, but now again earth, limited resources. So, more or less primary source of lead, which I guess I refer to as sources from mining, not really we do not really look for lead underneath the surface anymore, let us say, not a lot anyway. So, what do? We try to recycle what is already above, but where do we come across lead in general? We come across them in our batteries, car batteries, bike batteries and such, at least in the larger quantities. So, people take them out and then melt them beyond their boiling point I think is around 375 degrees centigrade. So, these so called mandi battis more or less melt this particular battery components at 400 degrees centigrade, and then you are going to have lead, molten lead cooled off, and you are going to have lead ingots. And to better understand why people look at these kinds of jobs, you need to understand the economics. So, key aspect of this course, if we are able to do a thorough job, is to understand that yes, we have environmental effects, but hand in hand we are going to have to look at the economical impact, right. Otherwise, no human who is looking for what do we say daily source of food, nobody, no such person is going to be concerned about the environment if he or she does not know what the next day entails, right. Okay, that is one aspect. So, lead, you have these kinds of car batteries, they are going to be drained of the acid and then they are going to arrive here. They are going to be cut mechanically here. So, again the person is going to be exposed to lead there, yes. Let us move on and see what else I have here. So, you have these particular components out here, the person is cutting lead out here, and then again depending on the kinds of manufacturers, you are going to have different colors and such. So, all this is lead. Again, where is it coming from? From our used batteries, car, bike and such batteries, let us say. So, again one person has gloves, at least because we were inspecting, they put up gloves. Usually I did not think or see that that was the case. I think I have a video here. Let us just quickly have a look at this video, right. So, we have this particular person cutting up the battery components and then segregating them, yes. And you see that they are inhaling stuff, you have coal, source of what is this heat or energy and so on and so forth, right. And you see that it is not really very well organized or such, at least from an environmental or from a health point of view, yes. So, the coal is going to be loaded in and your lead is going to be molten, right, and initially you are going to have such molten lead coming out, right. And let us see what else we have. Again molten lead, I wanted to show the ingots, but one other aspect to note is that, well, it is a very inefficient process and you are going to have this slag coming out, right. This is one of the byproducts. Other byproducts being you are going to have considerable air pollutants being released into the atmosphere during this particular melting of lead at 400 degrees centigrade, right. It is not smelting, but it is melting. So, you saw different what do we say, all this lead and such battery components lying out there. During any runoff event or washing, all this lead is going to go into the groundwater and during burning of this particular lead or melting of lead, you are going to have air pollution, specifically lead. And if you look at the permissible limit with respect to inhalation, it is very low, because it is obviously remarkably toxic and carcinogenic, and that is the reason why people were complaining about it, right. So, typically you need air pollution equipment. Here we have bag house filter, more or less we will talk about this later. This bag house filter was only put up after the industries were shut down and then threatened with permanent closure. And just to understand the amount of air pollutants that were being released, this is the amount of, what do we say, particulate matter that was captured in the bag house filter. You can understand that this comes up every 3 days. So, before that all this lead, understand that 50 to 60% of the particulate matter here is lead, was being released into the atmosphere, right. But still there are some issues, but now with the bag house filter and such, they are able to capture it. So, here 3 aspects to, or 4 or 5 aspects to keep in mind. The owner, let us say, is making around, or his turnover, let us say, not the profit, turnover is between 1 to 1.5 crores per month, right. So, there is the motive. With respect to the workers, the motive is that they need something to survive for the next week or the month. So, even if it is unsafe conditions, maybe because they are not aware or various reasons, they are going to work, right. And here the player, obviously, or not the player, the receptor, pardon me, is everyone out there, right. You have all the people living out there, and that is where the complaints came from, increasing instances of various aspects. Yet to be seen whether that is borne by data or sometimes exaggeration. So, again here we have economics involved and then pollution, right. So, if let us say you are thinking that okay, I am not right near the lead industry, it does not work out like that. Air pollutants, they are taken over of quite a what do we say, significant distance. So, here if you look at what you can do, typically the disposal of the batteries needs to be done to an authorized vendor. If not, they end up with such, now they are more or less semi-organized sector at such particular places, and if the pollution control board is not aware of the issue, you can have considerable air pollution, and again air pollution, it is going to affect more or less everybody. Okay, let us say you are not convinced that this information is not greatly relevant to you, maybe you would say it is in some industrialized areas or such, fine, that is not the a big deal. I think we have more to convince you, right. So, here I am going to present a series of photographs who or which were provided by Mr. Chandi Prasad Bhatt. I think he was the Padma Vibhushan, known he was, or Padma Vibhushan, that too way back in 1983. He is now around 93 or 94 years old. 2 years ago he came and shared his experiences with us. So, the photograph that I am going to show are from Mr. Chandi Prasad Bhatt's, what do we say, collection, or those that he has actually taken. So, obviously, this in 1882 is from his collection. So, this is Kedarnath, right, from 1882. So, at that time you can understand that it is I mean you can, this is obviously in the summer, because in the winter you could not at least go anywhere near Kedarnath, right. Again Kedarnath Shiva, I mean if you can look it up, it is remarkably considered to be remarkably holy. I think the background is that Adi Shankaracharya, I think from Kerala, right, he traveled to the 4 corners of India, and then one of the what do we say, many such centers that he established was or is at Kedarnath, right. Again I think the idea of India originated well beyond or before what do we say, the British time. Most people think that it was the British, but again let us not be distracted here. So, Kedarnath 1882, this was in peak summer obviously. So, you can look at the level of development, if any, or human intervention that we are talking about. This is right near the glaciers or in the glaciers. And I think this is from this particular script which I am unable to decipher, but I think it says 1880 again, right, 1880, right. Again you see more or less the picture and how it is, right. And with progress, if we can call that progress. So, 2009 this is what it looked like, yes, and then recently now more and more development, and you can see Kedarnath out here, right. And now you see a lot more development, yes. Again I should not call it development, maybe I should talk about human footprint. And then okay, fine. I wanted to have another picture which I was not able to, I guess, bring up here. Fine. So, here as you can see, human, if I may say so, footprint is everywhere, right, and that obviously some people see as a natural corollary of our existence. As the dominant species, we are going to have our tentacles everywhere. That seems fine. But as a selfish person too, we need to realize that this expansion, let us say, into all spheres of life or all spheres of the ecosystem without regard for the different layers of the ecosystem upon which we survive, let us say, right, or depend upon, without realization that they are in fine balance and that they are being affected by our development, right, we are going forward. So, let us see what are some of the issues. I just wanted to mention that some of the most remotest locations, let us say, are now witnessing considerable human activity, and obviously human activity typically has adverse effects. So, when I was looking at or talking about the lead related aspect, I wanted to convince some people that let us say you are an engineer or you at least any human being, the key aspect is that you need to know what needs to be done to be able to live sustainably, right. As an engineer, let us say you are, let us say, an electrical engineer or an ECE guy, let us say, and you have, let us say, semiconductors and you have different rare earth metals. So, if you throw it out, let us say, again just an aspect, what is going to happen? You are going to have loss of the rare earth metals because you need to dig for them or be dependent upon China and such. Right, rare earth metals, China has great resources or considerable resources. Let us not go into that particular picture. So, that is one aspect. Other aspect is pollution too, right, and another aspect is, let us say, I hope anyway, while taking this course or because of taking this course, you will be more environmentally conscious as an engineer or as a human being. One aspect, let us say, is life cycle assessment. If you are going to use a particular product, you can look at the life cycle assessment, as in what is its footprint from the point of time of manufacture to the point to its end of cycle or even after the time of disposal, and then choose those materials that are maybe relatively environmentally sustainable, right. So, in that aspect, I wanted to look at lead or look at that particular example in that particular context, let us see, as localized context. But for those people, let us say, who are not convinced, let us look at a bigger picture. So, here we have the glaciers, let us say Himalayan glaciers and such. What do we have here? We have the point of origin of Bhagirathi and Alaknanda. Later, I believe they join, and that is where we are going to have Ganga, right, river Ganga. Again, if I am messing up the names or such, you can think of it. So, again we have glaciers, and why are we looking at it? As you can see, we are talking about Bhagirathi, we are talking about Alaknanda, and we are somewhere out here, Rishikesh, Haridwar, I think Roorkee is somewhere downstream, let us say maybe out here, right. And you see that Ganga basin, right, really serves a huge part of North India, yes, and many, what is it, 40% of Indians, let us say, are dependent upon the Ganga basin. With climate change, obviously the glaciers are receding further and further, lesser availability of water or extreme disasters or extreme events more regularly. Let us say in my childhood, maybe a cyclone was once in maybe 10 years or so. Now, we hear of cyclones much more regularly, that is what I am talking about, or then floods and such. We have these extreme events. So, we have a deluge of water within a short period of time and no water when we need it. So, the total might be the same, but regular supply of dependable supply of water is a great concern. So, you have many people who are dependent upon this particular basin, and that is of considerable concern now. Why? Again, it is becoming relatively scarce, right. And another aspect is, let us say at IIT Roorkee, we have army personnel coming in, especially from the engineering corps, to take up some courses, let us say, especially in the civil department and I think in the CS and ECE departments. So, the Lieutenant Colonel, I think Colonel Vikrant, he was talking about the next war that the army plans for. It looks like the army plans for different scenarios and prepares infrastructure, training and so on and so forth accordingly. So, the next war, probably at least the one that they are training for, let us say, or have planned for, is going to be war over water. With which country, it is not worth going into at that stage, but again you should understand the scale or the magnitude of the event we are concerned with, right. And here we see Bhagirathi or the glacier or the point from which Bhagirathi originates. These pictures were taken by Mr. Chandi Bhatt Prasad himself during his travels, and here from Alaknanda, let us say. Again, every year they are receding. I think I have decent pictures. So, when we are talking about footprint, we are not just talking about a few houses and such, we are talking about the road network, the vehicles going in, the localized heating and so on and so forth. And then obviously, we try to tap nature when possible, yes, but when we let us say take a few steps when we should not, let us say, or we do not pay heed to the environmental concerns, let us see what can happen. So, there are quite a few power plants, hydropower plants coming up or planned in Uttarakhand, and I think here we have the Vishnuprayag hydro electricity project. It is 15 kilometers before Badrinath, right. It is still considerably high up, right. We have been talking about Kedarnath and now we are talking about Badrinath, but still this is still pretty high up above the mean sea level. So, they were under different stages or at the last stages of construction. And then we had the floods, right, and this is what it looked like. I think it was in 2013, right, huge scouring and washed away loss of life and property. So, when we try to maybe not take care of environmental concerns, obviously we are going to look at different issues, right, again considerable destruction, but we will talk about this during the discussion in class. So, before and after picture, so before and then after, right. So, again what I was trying to convey is that one is water, right, which is going to be an issue for everybody, and then people are going to be what do we say, in a constant state of agitation. So, your economy is going to be affected, and then obviously you are going to have these extreme events which are going to adversely impact considerable sections of our populace. So, we will look at that particular aspect too, maybe one article, but one aspect is we look at or hear of migration from one country to the other, or we look at or we have heard of different cities or civilizations becoming extinct. For example, South America, we had the Incas and such, right, and some civilizations in Mexico. At least let us go back to South America. I think Incas were from South America, right. We had the Portuguese or the Spanish land in South America. They brought a virus along with them, and then that wiped out the native population, right. Now again we are at a different stage in the age of corona, or I think Omicron or such, the new mutation that's now in the air. So, we are now again at different what do we say, tipping points. One is obviously with respect to climate change, and the other is with respect to our footprints on the ecosystem. So, whether we wake up based on the data before us or we go through will depend upon what do we say, what action we are willing to take. But action typically stems from what it is that you think or what you are aware of. So, that is something we are slightly trying to maybe look at in this particular course. So, let us move on. So, during that construction of the dams and such, all the dam muck obviously was stored out here. That obviously affects the free flow of water, and then after the flood obviously the whole muck brought and was flooded downstream, and then Srinagar, lower Srinagar town, you can see this particular scenario, let us see, right. And again A 2007 I guess, and 2009 and 2013 again you are going to look at deposition and then scouring and so on and so forth, right. Let me not spend too much time out here, we will discuss these aspects in class. Another aspect is building of roads and such. At least Kerala, now we are hearing of what do we say, floods, land slides, considerable loss of property and such. So, again you have these slopes which are semi-stable. During construction of these 2-lane roads or sometimes 4-lane roads, if due care is not particularly taken, or even with respect to the debris being dumped, you are going to destabilize these particular slopes. So, again we hear of Kerala, we have been hearing of the floods that our fellow citizens have been facing, but closer home to Roorkee, let us look at what it is out here. Let us see, this is I think is Uttarkashi, right. So, this is the scenario before the flood and after the what do we say, pardon me, landslide, let us see, right. You have this landslide destabilized, and you can see the landslide and then loss of property and resources, yes. And this was the gentleman that I have been talking about. He is 92 or 94 years old, Chandi Prasad Bhatt. I have been giving you a gloomy picture so far, but the reason that I had his picture at this stage is, well, I guess you are engineers and you are relatively intelligent people. Whether we are wise enough or not will have to be seen. That is something we will look at, let us say. So, here he is pointing about a particularly barren part of the land that he was able to reforest. We will look at that, but again what I was trying to say is that with concerted effort or the engineering resources and with your kind of intellect, solutions can be found. So, for example, here this was a situation, right, and then after some of their reforestation or such effects, you see the difference, right. Again we are talking about huge stretches, but again we need concerted effort, but let us not go into that. So, one major aspect is global warming, right. We are greatly concerned about it, we hear about it in the news. Why? Let us say we are what do we say, in a soup, if I may say so. You vary the temperatures or the temperature, let us say, pardon me, and the constituents are going to react differently. So, the issue with global warming or such is that it is not like, okay, I am going to release carbon dioxide, later I am going to capture it and then everything is going to be hunky dory. The issue is we are somewhere out here or already somewhere out here, and once we start falling down the cliff, there is no way back. Whatever you put, you can't put the genie back in the bottle, right. So, the most or the biggest challenge before us is global warming. Until very recently though, fake news, different political agendas and such, people have been hearing about is climate change real, is it due to human activity or so on and so forth, but now the science is irrefutable. Earth is heating up at a disastrously alarming rate, and 99 or 99.5% of the scientists agree. So, let us just look at some data before we wrap up for this particular session. So, pre-industrial levels and then 5-year running mean, you see some spikes. I think this is with respect to the world war, and then economic downturn, you see some what do we say, relative loss, if I may say so, and then again some spikes here and there, but again it is a consistent raise. We are typically talking about not a lot, but we will look at the data here, or rather later in the article that I am going to share with you, and you will see that a couple of degrees change or even 1 degree change is, I think we are at 1.5 degrees centigrade change, that is leading to considerable havoc, and 2 degrees is going to be disastrous, or rather we are at 1.2 or so, we want to limit it to 1.5, but again people never agree on anything due to various aspects. So, I think people want to set it at 2, while scientists say 1.5 is even going to be maybe just about enough, right. So, these are aspects we will keep looking at throughout the class. In this class, we are going to first look at global warming and some of the major challenges initially. Then we are going to look at the other major challenge that we are facing, which is air pollution, and then we will briefly talk about the aspects that are more local, but relevant to India, water, wastewater, and what do we say, solid waste management. And we will also try to go on, as I mentioned, field visits relevant to these particular aspects. Why? Because obviously only from practical exposure will you become a relatively more aware citizen or an engineer who can then take the relevant decisions, right. With that, I am going to end today's session, and that is it from me for now, and thank you.